Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for Friday's edition of Alaska Weather. Up first, August summary for Anchorage, and it was the third wettest on record with 6.8 inches, 1997 and 89 being two wetter years. And on the 8th, which seemed like the day it rained forever, 1.5 inches fell, and that was the 12th wettest day on record for any month. And then 27 days recorded some amount of rain on it, which made August seem like the month that rained forever. Warmest day, though, was 71 on the 3rd, and the coolest was on the 10th when it fell to 46 degrees. And satellite imagery showing a band of moisture moving northward with a low developing there as it moves across into the southern Gulf of Alaska, kind of that comma-shaped pattern right there, low pressure area. And that's starting to spread some rain into the panhandles. Continued fair amount of rain today, about 2 inches falling in Yakutat. Clouds spreading slowly westward after some good sunshine, which continuing into the mid-afternoon across Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet, up into the Madanuska Valley. Clouds increasing up into the Sitna Valley, and actually into the central interior with clouds increasing over the Madanuska Valley. And got some light rain going Valdez now, and possibly Portage, possibly Whittier, and otherwise not too bad. Some clouds out over the western, the western Aleutians, with the next system starting to spread moisture in out that way. And then northerly flow here, pretty gusty winds over the Pribilof Islands down to the eastern Aleutians, with areas of clouds and some shower activity there, or light rain, but pretty light amounts. Up to the north, loose clouds scattered, or kind of disorganized clouds up over the north slope. There were some showers today across the Brooks Range, as well as the western interior, but nothing too terribly heavy. Heaviest rainfall amounts today was about, 2 inches at Yakutat during the 12-hour period ending at mid-afternoon. By contrast, about 0.07 of an inch fell at Juneau, and that ended at midday today, a little after noon. And out west, Togiak picked up 1/3 of an inch of precipitation. Out farther to the west, Pribilof Islands had north winds gusting 30 to 40 miles an hour, and that blew right down across the eastern Aleutians. Still windy, but not quite as windy over the western Alaska Peninsula. Winds 25 to 35 miles an hour in gusts. Gale warnings here developing along the coast of the Panhandle and eastern North Gulf Coast today. Winds on the increase during the afternoon hours, with, of course, the moderate to heavy rain occurring from about Cordova eastward to Yakutat, and then it really tapers off as you go down the Panhandle areas. And for tonight, that front will weaken and spread rain all the way down to Dixon Entrance and beyond, to Queen Charlotte's. Periods of rain will move in westward over Cook Inlet and the Kenai Peninsula and the Susitna Valley during the evening tonight, and continue off and on throughout the entire night, with some showers up toward the Alaska Range, but farther to the west from actually Kodiak Island across much of interior Alaska. Pretty dry conditions with light winds all the way up to the Arctic coast. Look for low clouds, fog, IFR flying along the Arctic coast through the Bering Strait to St. Lawrence Island. And winds really come down later tonight for the Pribilof Islands. Next system moving into the western Aleutians with rain and small craft advisory level winds, and that's about it with that. High pressure, light winds, dry conditions, Adak and Atka. Still a little breezy over the Fox Islands with some light precipitation, low clouds, fog, drizzle. Same thing for the Alaska Peninsula, scattering out the showers toward Bristol Bay. And for Saturday, first day of the weekend, that front weakening as it kind of stalls out across the southeast coast. But you can see the gradient is really slack, so winds no longer a factor with that. Just some light rain or showers across the southeast coast. North Gulf Coast, periods of light rain and fog, rain and showers, cloudy skies, south central Alaska, right on up across through Windy Pass, and spilling into the interior here, right up to the Yukon River. Dry, though, from the Brooks Range out to the Arctic coast, and that system spreads rain now into the central Aleutians. High-pressure ridge over the Fox Islands, Pribilofs, dry conditions, light winds, maybe some sun breaks. Showers, though, for the Alaska Peninsula, just scattered light showers. Some sunshine over the western interior there, Norton Sound, and down across the Yukon Delta, maybe Togiak Bay. Otherwise, a weak system bringing some moisture into the Bering Strait and from about Kivlina up to Cape Lismore, really light there, a weak system. That just dissipates overnight Saturday and Sunday. Not too bad out west there over the interior. Even nicer there over the southern Bering Sea with high pressure ridging across from southwest to east-northeast right into the southwest coast. So look for some pretty good sunshine possibly for the Kuskokwim Yukon Delta right up the Yukon River into the mid-valley there. And then rain, periods of light rain or showers from the eastern Arctic coast all the way down into the Tanana Valley and then back into Cook Inlet, but diminishing showers through the day, increasing sunshine into the afternoon over south central Alaska, Copper River Basin areas. Showers also diminishing for Kodiak Island, kind of damp and unsettled for the southeast coast with some rain in the south, more showery on up to the north. And then that low cloud and fog pattern continues there for the Arctic coast into the Bering Strait with the light wind conditions. Next system over the Russian Far East poised to take a jog to the east-northeast, but that won't be until the first of next week. And for lows tonight, pretty mild over the Panhandle in the 50s to almost near 60. Otherwise, 40s to lower 50s or 40s to near 50 over southern Alaska, mid-40s Bristol Bay, followed by highs on Saturday. Mid to upper 50s in the Kuskokwim Valley, lower 60s in the Susitna Valley, 58 to 61 over the Kenai Peninsula, south central Alaska, upper 50s Copper River Basin, and Panhandle, upper 50s north toward Haines and Skagway, near 60 at Juneau, and then lower to mid 60s on down to the south. Lows Sunday morning around 50 for Kodiak Island, otherwise in the 40s, exception in higher valleys of the Copper River Basin down into the 30s, 50 to 55 for the southeast coast, upper 40s for the North Gulf Coast. Followed by highs on Sunday, again upper 50s, lower 60s, south central Alaska, lower 60s Bristol Bay, in the 50s for the Kuskokwim Valley, Copper River Basin, and Panhandle, lower 60s though, south, upper 50s to the north. Lows 30s, Arctic coast into the North Slope Brooks Range, south of the Brooks Range in the 40s. Highs for Saturday afternoon, 50s to lower 60s over areas south of the Brooks Range. Not too much cooler though on the North Slope, but in the 40s out toward the Arctic coast with that cooler onshore flow. Then back into the upper 30s for the Arctic coast to the Brooks Range, south of the mountains for the low Sunday morning in the mid 40s for the most part. And then highs in the 50s, mid to upper over the interior valley areas, upper 40s Brooks Range, lower 40s to near 50 for the North Slope and Arctic coast. And for the southwest part of the state, lows tonight in the 40s, Sepshimia near 50, near 40 for St. Lawrence Island. Highs along the coast, upper 40s to lower 50s, near 50 for the eastern Aleutians, upper 50s for Adak, 51 for the Pribilofs. Lows in the 40s again for Sunday morning, lower 40s St. Lawrence Island, mid 40s for the Pribilofs, upper 40s for the central Aleutians, mid 40s for the Alaska Peninsula. And then highs for Sunday afternoon, just about in the 50s everywhere, except near 50 for Dutch Harbor, 49 for Savunga, and mid 50s across the Alaska Peninsula, lower 50s along the southwest coast.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
And on to flying weather, got IFR from the Brooks Range right out to the Arctic coast, down across the Noatak Valley, northwest coast, into Kotzebue Sound, and then a portion extending eastward across the Kobuk Valley there into the central interior, north central interior, just north of the Yukon River, and then St. Lawrence Island in the IFR zone, as well as areas of the western Aleutians. VFR, Adak and Atka, some IFR for the eastern Aleutians. IFR looks like along and south of the Alaska Range, but cuts down across the Talkeetnas, southern Copper River Basin, Prince William Sound, Portage eastward there, looks like the Valdez, as well as eastern North Gulf Coast. Marginal for the Panhandle, marginal for Kodiak Island, some VFR over the southwest interior, Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula. And for the afternoon, more VFR, more widespread VFR from Bristol Bay up into the Kuskokwim Valley, Cook Inlet, and the southern Susitna Valley anyway, western Kenai Peninsula, And then Matanuska Valley down to Turnagain Arm, Prince William Sound, Resurrection Bay, all marginal. Some lingering IFR in the eastern coast range there. And then VFR for the Panhandle. IFR back now along the central and eastern Arctic coast, and some on the west side there down across Kivalina, Seward Peninsula into the northern Bering Sea, and then a swath of VFR moving into the Pribilofs down across the eastern Aleutians. Next batch of IFR spreading into the western and central Aleutians. That shifts eastward from Amchitka Island to Atka for Sunday morning out that way. More IFR into the Yukon Delta, Nunivak Island, and St. Lawrence Island to the Bering Strait, eastern Arctic coast, IFR down across the eastern Brooks Range, and then right on down into the Tanana Valley, Fairbanks down to the Alaska Peninsula, VFR Cook Inlet down to Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, and the lower Yukon River Valley, portions of Norton Sound, VFR for the Panhandle, marginal for the North Gulf Coast. And then for Sunday afternoon, not too bad over interior Alaska, areas of marginal VFR around. Otherwise, some IFR there slipping into the southern Panhandle. And then conditions improve as you head north there. Some areas seeing VFR in the afternoon. North Gulf Coast looks VFR, Prince William Sound, northern Cook Inlet area up into the Matanuska Valley, part of the Susitna Valley, and Copper River Basin. IFR, though, from the northern Bering Sea southwestward to the western Aleutians, but the Pribilofs, Alaska Peninsula, good VFR. Passes, Anatuvik, marginal. Tomorrow, kind of split the difference here. I think it'll be occasionally VFR for Adigan, maybe marginal at other times. Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR. Rainy, though, looks marginal at times throughout the day. Windy, marginal VFR. Same forecast for Isabel, occasionally or mostly marginal. Mentasta, same forecast, mostly marginal. And Tanita looks marginal. And Portage, marginal at best. Chilcoot and White starting out a little marginal in those passes, but becoming VFR for most of the day, especially in the afternoon. And for the freezing levels, about 4,000 to 6,000 feet there from the Chukchi Sea to the Seward Peninsula, 8,000 to 10,000 feet over the western Aleutian areas, otherwise at about 6,000 to 8,000 feet southern Alaska, 8,000 to 10,000 feet over the Panhandle. Moving on to icing. Moisture moving, mostly, it looks like the bulk of the moisture will be cutting in south of the Panhandle there with a heavier icing. Could be some considerable moderate up over the southeast interior North Gulf Coast. Otherwise, not too bad, just some areas of isolated moderate or light stuff mixed possibly over the southeast interior. And then out west, another batch of moisture pushing elevated icing threats eastward to Atka Island. Big ridge of high pressure at 33,000 feet, jet stream level out over the Bering Sea. Northerlies, actually wind flow coming over the top of that, a weaker wind flow. The main jet south of that high center, as you can see, 120 knots south of the Aleutians, 60 knotters coming southward there over the eastern Bering Sea, 105 knots southerlies, southern Panhandle, 30 to 35 knot northerlies there over the eastern Bering Sea, Alaska Peninsula, south 45, moving out of the Panhandle. And at 9,000 feet, not too bad here, 35 knots into the central Aleutians, 25 knots out of the north over the southwest interior Alaska Peninsula areas. And for turbulence, not too bad, maybe some improving turbulence, isolated moderate chop lingering over the Panhandle, Alaska Peninsula, but heavier, considerable moderate chop over the Aleutians.
Leatherbacks are the largest turtles on Earth, growing up to 7 feet long and weighing more than 2,000 pounds. These sea turtles are among the most highly migratory animals on Earth, some traveling up to 10,000 miles a year between their nesting and feeding grounds. Prevalent in every ocean except the Arctic and Antarctic, the species overall is declining, more so in the Pacific. In the eastern Pacific, the Mexican population was once thought to be the largest in the world and has experienced an alarming decline.
This trajectory of decline that we've seen and actually collapse. We're talking about only 20 or 30 turtles nesting every year, where thousands used to just 40 years ago. That's the kind of dramatic decline.
The Western Pacific population has been declining steadily, and it's particularly critical to act now before it collapses, while there are enough turtles and nests to respond to conservation measures. But threats to all leatherbacks in the Pacific need to be addressed.
The top threats to populations are uncontrolled coastal development, all the bad stuff on the nesting beaches, egg harvest, poaching of the females, predation on the eggs by dogs and pigs. Deforestation makes the sand too warm and dry and the eggs don't hatch. Another one is incidental capture in fishing gear. During their vast migrations, they get caught in fishing gear throughout the Pacific. And finally, marine debris, which the leatherbacks mistake for their favorite food, jellyfish, and they choke on those.
Protecting leatherbacks in U.S. waters alone is not enough to ensure the continued existence of the species. The highly migratory nature of Pacific leatherbacks requires cooperation and international collaboration. NOAA is focusing on partnerships with Mexico, Central America, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, and the Solomon Islands in the Pacific.
Our action plan promotes a holistic recovery strategy that addresses all the sources of mortality. So that's basically ensuring that the remaining nesting sites are protected. And the nests produce as many hatchlings as possible. And then secondly, in tandem with that, is reducing the fisheries-related mortalities. We're working with international partners to incentivize community participation on the nesting beach conservation and developing alternative livelihood programs that wean communities off leatherback resources and introduce alternative methods for food and income. Recovery is going to take a long time, on the order of 20 to 30 years at least, before we see some of these actions bear fruit. But here in the US, we can all help leatherbacks by making seafood choices, for instance, that support sustainable fishing practices. And beachgoers can certainly do their part by keeping our oceans clean of plastic debris, picking up marine litter, particularly plastic bags.
Together with our partners, we are strengthening protection and conservation efforts to ensure a future for leatherbacks, helping them to survive and once again thrive in the waters of the Pacific Ocean.
For over 40 years, NOAA scientists have been collecting data and piecing together the story of the gray whale. Each year, new discoveries are made, revealing the secrets of this ancient traveler. With the northeastern Pacific population recovered, leading scientists from the NOAA Southwest Fisheries Science Center continue their research efforts to help save the western population from extinction. The most effective way to identify individuals and count the population is to photograph them from the surface. Using the gray whale's distinctive markings and gray spots caused by parasites on their skin, scientists document these characteristics to identify individuals.
So we're able to track migratory pathways and corridors by the simple use of photo identification. There are other ways to do that as well, biopsy sampling and genetics.
And from the air.
Aerial photography is one way you can study animals based on their size and shape. So you can learn a lot about nutritive and reproductive condition of whales just by measuring their size and shape from vertical aerial photographs.
You can also put satellite transmitters on them and track them remotely. You put the transmitter on and let them go, and you watch them move across the Pacific or down to China or wherever it might be.
To further learn and discover where these great sojourners swim, the team of researchers traveled to Russia and set up camp on Sakhalin Island.
The main focus of our research while we were on Sakhalin was to collect photo identification. If it was a whale that we had not collected a genetic sample from previously, we would also attempt to collect a sample from the whales.
Whereas whales are endowed with natural insulation, their human observers must gear up to brave the cold in order to study these marine giants up close.
We're typically only able to work about 1/3 of the time that we're there, and that's mostly due to this fog that just invades the area and sits sometimes for weeks on end. So it can be very challenging to try and do field work in this site.
Recently, 2 whales from the western population surprised scientists by migrating across the Pacific to the waters of California and Mexico.
It's a really fun finding. It's added another piece to the puzzle that we didn't previously know about. And I would have to say that it's opened up more questions than we had before.
Research scientists from Japan, Russia, and the United States share images of animals they've spotted.
We take a photograph of an individual off of Sakhalin Island, and we get a phone call from Japanese scientists, and they say, hey, guess what? We've got a picture of a gray whale in Japan. We say, can you send it to us? We'd love to try and match it. They'll send us the picture, we'll compare it to our catalog, and we'll say, hey, we've got a match from Sakhalin to Japan.
Unlike many species of whales that still remain on the endangered species list, the eastern Pacific gray whale, once on the brink of extinction, now numbers about 20,000 individuals. Recovery efforts that started 40 years ago and the ongoing research and monitoring by NOAA scientists have contributed to the conservation of the gray whales. Together, with legal protection and public education, scientists are playing their part to ensure the survival of this magnificent migratory animal.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Okay, marine forecast starting out along the southeast coast. South winds 15 knots the entire stretch of the coastline, and seas up either side of 10 feet with small craft advisories for the northern inner channel, especially Lynn Canal, south winds 25 knots. Small craft advisories also for Clarence Strait, south winds 25 knots, seas 6 feet. Stevens Passage, southeast winds tomorrow at 20 knots. And for the day Sunday, south winds 15 knots for the central and south coast of the Panhandle, seas around 6 feet. For the north coast, east winds at 15 knots. And Lynn Canal Glacier Bay, south winds 15, and Stevens Passage, central inner channels, variable to southeast at 10. And Clarence Strait holding on to a southeast wind at about 20 knots. Prince William Sound for Saturday, southeast winds 20 knots, seas around 3 feet, give or take. And for the North Gulf Coast, south winds 20 knots. Barren Islands, southwest at 20. Small craft advisories for Kamishak Bay, west winds at 25 knots. Northern Cook Inlet looking at variable winds at 10 knots, pretty light with slight seas. South of the Forelands, though, southeast winds at 15. And for Sunday, Cook Inlet, Kamishak Bay, all light and variable with slight seas for the day. And for the Barren Islands, north winds at 15 knots. For the North Gulf Coast, north to northwest winds at 15 knots. And Prince William Sound, northwest winds at 10. Kodiak Island, west to southwest winds 15 to 20 knots for Saturday. And the Alaska Peninsula looking at northwest winds at 20 to 25 knots. Bristol Bay, northwest at 15 with 5-foot seas. And for Bristol Bay on Sunday, northwest winds only at 10 knots. Northwest at 15 for the Alaska Peninsula. Kodiak Island, light variable winds, 10 knots or so, with seas 2 to 5 feet. On Alaska Island tomorrow, northwest winds 20 to 25 knots. Umack Island, variable to northwest at 10 to 15 knots. Small craft advisories for Adak and Atka, southeast 25. A little bit stronger winds there for the western Aleutians out of the east and southeast at 30 knots with 8-foot seas. And for Sunday, looking at west to southwest winds at about 20 knots there, with 7-foot seas for the western Aleutians. Central areas, north 20 to 25 knots. And Nunivak Island, northeast winds 20 to 25 knots. On Alaska Island, a little lighter and more variable at 10 to 15 knots with 4-foot seas. For the southwest coast, Saturday, northwest winds at 20 knots with seas 5 to 6 feet. And for St. Matthew Island, winds will be west at 20 knots with 5-foot seas. Pribilof Island's not too bad, northwest breeze at 15 knots, seas up to about 6 feet though. And St. Lawrence Island, winds will be out of the southwest at 20 knots. Norton Sound, north winds at 15 knots. And for the day on Sunday, Pribilof Islands, right on into Kuskokwim Bay and along the southwest coast, south of Nunivak Island, west winds 15 knots, seas 3 feet. And for the Yukon Delta coast, St. Lawrence Island, southwest winds at 15 knots. And for the St. Matthew Island area, small craft advisories there for southwest winds at 25 knots, looking at a west wind at 10 knots for Norton Sound. Up along the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, kind of a light variable wind pattern tomorrow at 5 to 10 knots from either the east or north. Central coast, variable to southeast, light at 10 knots or less. Western Arctic coast all the way down to Wales. South winds 15 knots with seas running 3 to 4 feet. And for Sunday, Wales to Cape Thompson, north winds at 10 knots. Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort, west at 15. West 20 knots for the western Arctic coast. Central coast, west at 15. And then variable winds at 10 to 15 knots for the eastern stretch of the Beaufort Sea coast. For tonight, look for low clouds and fog along the Arctic Ocean, Arctic coast, down through the Bering Strait to St. Lawrence Island. Areas of light rain, fog, and drizzle. Pribilofs into the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians. Periods of rain move westward this evening into south central Alaska, Kenai Peninsula, and Nuskasasitna Valley. Weakening front, so winds diminishing, but rain continues over all of the southeast coast, spreading even down toward the Queen Charlotte's and Dixon entrance. Next system pushing rain into the western Aleutians. That moves to the central Aleutians during the day Saturday. High pressure, light winds, maybe some sunshine, possibly, for the Pribilofs and eastern Aleutian areas, as well as Yukon and Kuskokwim Delta, or mostly the Yukon Delta up to Norton Sound. And periods of rain, cloudy skies, light rain, south central Alaska, North Gulf Coast, all of the Panhandle, showers to the north, ending toward the Brooks Range. And for Sunday, pretty nice over the southern Bering Sea and the Aleutians into the southwest interior with some pretty good sunshine up the Yukon River Valley until you get into the flats. Showers diminishing, south central Alaska, sunshine increasing, cloudy and damp over the Panhandle.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.